I want to take you back in history about 100 years. Now, most of us would need a book, history book to do that, myself included. I'm going to take you back to the decade between 1910 and 1920, just for a moment. In that decade, this globe saw seismic changes that would change the course of history of many different nations and the countries around us, including ours, other continents. We saw things like the World War I. 12 million people died, right? We saw a pandemic, a 2-year pandemic. Around 50 million people died worldwide. So between those two events, almost 4% of the world's population was gone, right? A world in turmoil. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Not a lot different. So where does that meet us in our faith group? Well, a world in turmoil leads to questions that only God can answer. Isn't that right? And I'm thankful to be in a church congregation that prioritizes outreach, prioritizes evangelism, as we saw in October, right? We had a good old-fashioned Daniel and Revelation seminar. And as I understand, and I thought these numbers were awesome, we had at least 40 visitors on a regular basis, and 15 people declared for baptism. Isn't that awesome? We saw some up front too. We had some rebaptisms. So it's such a high time to reach out to people because everybody at some point is going to go through turmoil, right? Challenges. Well, I believe in evangelism. And around that same time, in 1923, a faithful evangelist trained at the old Danish-Norwegian seminary in Hutchinson, Minnesota, was tasked with Iowa as his region. Tent meetings, good old-fashioned tent meetings. Faithful worker. And I'll have the guys put a picture up on the screen in just a moment. So this is where it meets my family. My family was introduced to the Adventist message through a tent meeting, right? And this is the picture of my grandmother. This is my dad's mom. Beautiful woman, right? Even more beautiful inside. So she attended the meetings in 1923 that were put on in a local community around where I grew up, a very tight-knit community. Her father, who was a Quaker from Norway, and the mother, my great-grandmother, was a Lutheran from Norway, which was the state religion in Norway. Many Quakers, actually, interestingly enough, fled Norway because of the persecution, the religious persecution that they were under in Norway. And they were looking as well for what truth is. So as we talk about a truth over this time, it has deep-seated history in my family. They were looking for truth as well. They were seeking a new home in this country. They were seeking freedoms. They were seeking land ownership potentials. But they were also deeply looking for truth because they were in that world of turmoil. They had seen the World War. They had seen the pandemic. They had seen tragedy in their family by that time. So this picture was taken probably in 1934, about 10 years after those meetings. My great-grandmother was baptized at those meetings, and this was about 2 years after my grandma was baptized, after she continued to study. In Sabbath school, by the way, and in church services, she stayed with the group until ultimately she made her decision to be baptized into this faith. And that's where I come from.